It started with a single bloodstain, a dark, smeared trail leading to a question no one in power wants you to ask. Who killed Kenneth Trentadue? August 1995. A nondescript holding cell in the Oklahoma County Jail. A man in handcuffs gives a fake name at check-in, Jesse Madrid. 12 hours later, he's dead. The official report claims suicide. A tragic end, case closed. But the truth? It's written in the bruises no hanging could explain. The shattered hyoid bone that only appears in violent strangulation. And the crudely carved symbol on his chest. A triangle with a slash through it, like a hunter's mark on a tree. They told his family he tied a bedsheet to a ventilation grate just 5 feet off the ground. Yet his neck was snapped with the force of a car crash. They said he did this to himself, but his knuckles were split open, his face a mess of contusions, and his body drenched in someone else's blood. His real name was Kenneth Trentadue. A father, a brother, a man who'd served his time and was rebuilding his life. Until the U.S. government moved him like a chess piece from a California highway to a jail cell in Oklahoma. Why? No one answered. Not then. Not in the 30 years since. This isn't a cold case. It's a cover-up. A mother was handed her son's ashes before she even knew he was dead. A brother, a hardened Vietnam vet, spent decades uncovering shredded documents and threatening phone calls. A $1.6 million hush money offer from the Department of Justice refused. Because this family didn't want compensation. They wanted answers. What are they hiding? A connection to the Oklahoma City bombing? A botched interrogation? A shadow operation gone wrong? Every clue leads to a locked door. Every witness disappears. Every Freedom of Information Act request comes back redacted. So let me ask you, when the government calls it a suicide, but erases the evidence, silences the witnesses, and bullies the victim's family, what does that sound like to you? What could turn a routine traffic stop into a death sentence? To understand Kenneth Trentadue's final days, you need to know 2 things. He was a man clawing his way out of darkness, and someone did not want him to escape it. Kenneth's past was messy: a convicted bank robber, a struggle with addiction, a man who'd burned bridges. But by 1995, he'd begun rebuilding. He'd landed a construction job in San Diego. He'd just welcomed a baby boy, named Jesse after his brother. For the first time in years, Kenneth had something to lose. Then came August 21st. A broken taillight, a California highway. Police ran his plates and found a parole violation. A minor paperwork slip, his family insists. But instead of booking him locally, authorities flagged him as high risk. No explanation. No warning. Within hours, he was shackled and shipped to a federal transfer facility in Oklahoma City, 1,200 miles from his family, his lawyer, anyone who knew his real name. Why Oklahoma? The government still claims it was random. But here's what doesn't fit. The transfer cost taxpayers thousands for a man weeks away from parole. The Oklahoma facility wasn't just any jail. It was the same federal complex holding Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber. Guards later admitted Kenneth was put in a suicide watch cell, despite no history of mental illness. For 48 hours, Kenneth vanished into a bureaucratic black hole. No phone calls, no visitor logs. His family didn't even know he'd been moved. Then, at 5:30 a.m. on August 23rd, a guard found him dead. The official story? He'd torn a bedsheet, tied it to a ventilation grate 5 feet off the ground, and somehow hanged himself with his hands cuffed behind his back. But let's pause here. Kenneth was 5 feet 11 inches. The grate was eye level. Even the FBI's own physics experts later admitted, it's impossible to hang yourself from that height without your knees touching the floor. So why did 6 federal agencies sign off on this suicide? Why was his body embalmed before his family could see it? And why did the Justice Department later admit, under oath, that Kenneth's blood was found mixed with another unknown male's in that cell? The truth is buried in those missing 48 hours. A man who'd survived prison riots and addiction, dead in a spotless federal facility. A system that moved heaven and earth to silence anyone who asked, what did Kenneth Trentadue know that made him worth disappearing? The official report is 8 pages long, neatly typed, signed by 6 federal agents. and every word of it is physically impossible. Let's break down the suicide that defies gravity, anatomy, and basic logic. First, the hyoid bone, a fragile U-shaped bone in your neck, protected by muscle. To shatter it takes violent, direct force, like a choke hold. In hangings, it almost never breaks. Yet Kenneth's hyoid wasn't just fractured. It was pulverized, according to the autopsy, like someone crushed his throat with their hands. Second, the face. His nose broken, lips split, eyes swollen shut. The coroner noted blunt force trauma inconsistent with self-harm. Translation: these weren't the knuckle bruises of a desperate man punching walls. This was a beating, methodical, angry. And the FBI's excuse? He must have fallen repeatedly. Third, the symbol. A triangle sliced through with a single jagged line, carved into his chest. Not deep enough to kill, but precise enough to send a message. Was it a gang sign? A federal mark? A torturer's signature? The FBI confiscated the photos. The family never saw it. Now the coroner, Dr. Fred Jordan, a 20-year veteran, took one look at the body and refused to call it suicide. This is a homicide, he said. But before he could file his report, the FBI stormed his office. They seized the bedsheet, the ventilation grate, even the floor tiles from Kenneth's cell. They bleached the walls. They burned the evidence logs. And then they handed Dr. Jordan a pre-written death certificate, with his signature already forged at the bottom. But the most damning clue? The blood. Rivers of it, pooled under Kenneth's body, smeared on the walls, soaked into his clothes. Except, half of it wasn't his. DNA tests revealed another man's blood. Someone never identified, never questioned. A ghost, or a cleanup. So the government played their last card, money. $1.6 million. Enough to buy silence, a new life, a fresh start. Kenneth's mother, Ida, said 5 words. "We don't sell our dead." Ask yourself, if this was truly a suicide, why burn the evidence? Why bleach the cell? Why pay millions to bury the truth? The answer's written in Kenneth's shattered bones. A truth so dangerous, even the walls had to be scrubbed clean. April 19th, 1995. A rental truck packed with 5,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate explodes outside the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. 168 people die. Hundreds more are maimed. It's the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in U.S. history. The bomber, Timothy McVeigh, is arrested 90 minutes later. Case closed, or was it? Because hidden in the rubble of that building is a secret that leads straight to Kenneth Trentadue's body. A secret still buried under layers of lies. Let's rewind. After the blast, witnesses reported seeing McVeigh with another man, John Doe 2. A stocky, dark-haired accomplice in a blue hoodie. Sketches of his face plastered every news channel. The FBI launched a nationwide manhunt, and then suddenly called it off. He doesn't exist, they said. A case of mistaken identity. But here's what they didn't say. The government's own lead prosecutor later admitted, "We had evidence of a second bomb and a second bomber." Now, fast forward 4 months. August 1995. Kenneth Trentadue, a man with a striking resemblance to the John Doe 2 sketch, is arrested in California. Same build, same tattoos, same criminal past. But instead of booking him locally, he's whisked 1,200 miles away to Oklahoma City, to the same federal prison where McVeigh was being held. Coincidence? The Trentadue family says no. Let's connect the dots. Day 1. Kenneth arrives in Oklahoma. Guards later testified he was placed in administrative segregation, a solitary cell reserved for high-value inmates. Day 2. FBI agents visited the prison. Not unusual, except visitor logs show 7 agents signed in that day. The warden called it routine. Night 2, Kenneth dies. The surveillance camera in his cell? Malfunctioned. The tapes? Lost. But the most chilling detail? Kenneth's brother Jesse obtained leaked FBI files showing agents compared his mugshot to the John Doe 2 sketch days before his death. They circled his tattoos, wrote "match" in red ink. Then, after he died, those files were stamped "destroy." So what's the theory? That Kenneth was misidentified as John Doe 2. That overzealous agents, desperate to close the bombing case, interrogated him with extreme prejudice. That when he couldn't give them what they wanted, because he didn't know anything, they staged a suicide to hide their mistake. But let's be clear, this isn't wild speculation. A former Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation agent swore, under oath, that a jail guard confessed to him. They beat the hell out of Trentadue. Thought he was the bomber's buddy. Realized too late he was the wrong guy. The guard, found dead of an accidental drug overdose 2 weeks later. And then there's the symbol. Remember the triangle carved into Kenneth's chest? Former federal inmates have come forward, claiming it's a Black Ops code used by interrogators to mark disposable prisoners. The FBI denies this, but also denies the symbol exists at all, even though the coroner photographed it, even though the family's lawyer held those photos up in court. Here's what we know for sure. The Justice Department's own 1998 report called Kenneth's death suspicious and noted possible involvement of persons other than the deceased. The FBI never tested the unknown blood in Kenneth's cell against John Doe 2's DNA. In 2001, the government quietly settled a lawsuit with the Trentadue family, paying $1.1 million for the distress caused by losing the evidence. Not an admission of guilt, but not an admission either. But the real smoking gun? McVeigh himself. In 2001, days before his execution, he gave a final interview. When asked about John Doe 2, he smirked and said, "They'll never let you find him." Was he taunting the FBI or warning us? The Trentadue family believes Kenneth was sacrificed, a convenient patsy to bury the bombing's loose ends. Think about it, a former felon with no alibi, a face that matched the sketch, a system that could make him disappear with a fake name and a bleached cell. If true, it means the government didn't just fail to solve Kenneth's death, they orchestrated it. But why go through all this trouble? Because John Doe 2 isn't just a man. He's proof that the Oklahoma City bombing was bigger than McVeigh, that there were others, networks, enablers, and if that truth got out, it wouldn't just embarrass the FBI, it'd ignite a national reckoning. So they burned the evidence. They threatened witnesses. They let a grieving mother spend 30 years begging for her son's autopsy report, only to receive 400 pages of blacked-out text. And when a journalist filed a FOIA request for the John Doe 2 files in 2015, the FBI said they'd accidentally shredded them. But secrets don't stay buried. Not forever. In 2021, a whistleblower leaked a 1995 internal memo from the Oklahoma County DA's office. One line stands out. Trentadue's death must be treated as bombing related to avoid compromising the McVeigh prosecution. Let me repeat that. Bombing related. The government's response? The memo was taken out of context. Of course it was. So here we are. 168 people died in Oklahoma City. A father died in a jail cell. And the only thing linking them is a mountain of destroyed evidence, dead witnesses, and a family that refuses to let the world forget. The question isn't, was there a cover-up? It's how deep does it go? And why, 30 years later, does the FBI still act like Kenneth Trentadue's name is a national security threat? Jesse Trentadue didn't just lose a brother. He lost 30 years of his life, his marriage, his savings, his peace, all spent chasing a truth the United States government weaponized against him. This isn't a story about grief. It's about war, a Vietnam veteran battling an enemy far more ruthless than the Viet Cong, the FBI. Let's start with Jesse, a former Green Beret, a man who survived ambushes in the Mekong Delta. But nothing prepared him for the call he got on August 23, 1995. Your brother's dead. Suicide. Come collect the body. When he saw Kenneth's remains, the broken neck, the symbol carved into his chest, he made a vow. I will burn down every building in Washington to find who did this. And for 3 decades he's tried. His first move, sue the FBI. Not for money, for the evidence. The bedsheet, the surveillance tapes, the bloody floor tiles. But when Jesse's lawyers subpoenaed the files, the government said they'd misfiled them, then accidentally shredded them, then claimed they never existed. But Jesse had a secret weapon, whistleblowers. In 1998, a jail guard named Randy Ratke tracked Jesse down. He'd worked the night Kenneth died. They killed that man, Ratke said. FBI was there. They took him to an interrogation room. He was screaming. Then he wasn't. Raki agreed to testify until he got a visit from two agents in black suits. They told me if I talked, my kids would fall off their bikes. Real hard. Raki recanted, then moved to Alaska, then died in a single-car crash in 2003. But Jesse didn't stop. He combed through 10,000 pages of FOIA documents. Most were blacked out, but in the margins he found gold, a memo from the Oklahoma County DA to the FBI. Destroy all fingerprints from Trentadue's cell. They don't match the corpse. A lab report confirming the blood in Kenneth's cell was type AB. Kenneth was type O. A handwritten note from a federal agent. Tell the family it's suicide. No exceptions. Jesse took it all to court and lost. Again and again. Judges dismissed his suits, citing national security. The FBI smeared him as a conspiracy nut. Then, in 2004, they raided his home. Evidence tampering, they claimed. They took his files, his computer, even his toothbrush. But they missed one thing, a USB drive hidden in his daughter's teddy bear. On it, a deathbed confession from another guard. This guard, name redacted, admitted he'd been ordered to clean the cell twice before investigators arrived. There was too much blood, he said. We used bleach. Burned the sheets. The FBI took the body bag, said they'd make it look right. The guard died 3 days after the recording was made. Heart attack, the coroner said. He was 31. By 2015, Jesse was broke, divorced, living in a trailer. But he'd become a thorn in the DOJ's side. Senators started asking questions. Journalists dug into the Oklahoma City bombing links. And then the unthinkable. In 2017, the FBI accidentally sent Jesse 200 pages of unredacted files. In them, agents discussed Kenneth's resemblance to John Doe 2 and debated containing the family's narrative. The DOJ panicked. They offered Jesse $1.6 million to drop everything. His response? I'll take $1 and the names of everyone in that cell. They refused, so he leaked the files to the New York Times. The headline? FBI withheld evidence in suspicious death tied to Oklahoma bombing. The backlash forced the DOJ's hand. In 2021, they issued a statement. Kenneth Trentadue's death was not what it appeared to be. A seismic admission and a hollow one. No arrests, no apologies, just a bureaucratic shrug. Not what it appeared to be. As if 30 years of gaslighting could be undone with a PR phrase. But here's what they still won't explain. Why did the FBI wiretap Jesse's phones from 1999 to 2008? Why was Kenneth's death certificate altered 3 times? Why did a DOJ attorney blurt out in court, "This case will never see daylight"? The answer is simple. They're afraid of him. A lone man, armed with nothing but a brother's love and a soldier's grit, outlasting their lies. Jesse's not a lawyer, not a politician. He's a relic of a time when people believed justice was worth bleeding for. But time is running out. Jesse's 75 now. His hands shake from Parkinson's. His eyesight's fading. Yet every morning, he lugs a stack of files to the local library, scanning documents onto a website he built himself. WhoKilledKenneth.com. The feds have hacked it twice. He keeps rebuilding it. In 2022, he got a letter from a retired FBI agent. Anonymous. Typed. It read, "You're right. They killed him. But the truth would burn this country down." Jesse framed it, hung it next to Kenneth's photo. A trophy, or a tombstone. So what's left? No smoking gun, no hero's ending, just a family's unbroken resolve. When asked why he keeps fighting, Jesse says, "They took my brother's life, but they don't get to take his name. This isn't a true crime story. It's a blueprint, a roadmap of how power silences dissent. Not with brute force, but with paperwork, delay tactics, and the slow, crushing weight of indifference." The Trentadues didn't just lose Kenneth. They lost faith in the myth America sells itself, justice for all. But Jesse's war isn't over. He's training his nephew, Kenneth's son, to take up the fight. The next generation of a family the government couldn't break. Because the Trentadues have something the FBI can't shred, burn, or redact: time. They'll outlast every agent, every cover-up, every lie, even if it takes another 30 years. Let's cut through the noise. This isn't about Kenneth Trentadue anymore. It's about you. The lies they told his family, they're telling you those same lies right now. Just quieter, just better. Because if a government can torture a man to death, hide his killer's DNA, and bully his family into oblivion, what can't they do? Let's start with the questions that should keep you awake tonight. 1. Why was Kenneth's body drenched in someone else's blood? Not a drop, not a smear. Drenched. The FBI's explanation? He must have rolled in it. Rolled. In a cell the size of a parking spot. A cell they bleached before forensics arrived. Let's play this out. If Kenneth killed himself, whose blood flooded that room? A guard's? Another inmate's? Or someone who tried to help him? The government's answer? Inconclusive. But here's what they're really saying. You don't have the right to know. 2. Why did the FBI raid Jesse's home 3 weeks after Kenneth's death? Not to investigate, to intimidate. Agents stormed in at dawn, tore open drawers, stole family photos, Jesse's war medals, even the baby clothes of Kenneth's son. Their warrant? Suspicion of evidence tampering. But Jesse hadn't even seen the body yet. The real reason? Jesse had hired a private pathologist. The FBI wanted to steal the autopsy report. They failed. That report? It's why we know about the shattered hyoid bone. The symbol. The blood. 3. Why are 37 documents in the Trentadue case still classified as top secret? Not confidential. Top secret. The same level as nuclear codes and CIA black sites. What's in them? According to a 2017 leak, one file details a black bag meeting between the FBI and DOJ hours after Kenneth's death. Another lists operational aliases of agents present that night. The most chilling? A memo titled Narrative Alignment, orders to standardize testimony across 6 federal agencies. Translation: get your story straight. But let's pause here. These aren't just bureaucratic loose ends. They're proof of a system, one that's polished over decades to erase inconvenient truths. Think of it like this. When you delete an email, it's gone. When they delete an email, it's routine data maintenance. When you lie, it's perjury. When they lie, it's national security. Which brings us to the ultimate question. Why should you care? Maybe you think, I'm not a criminal. This could never happen to me. But neither was Kenneth. Not in 1995. He'd served his time, paid his debt. He was pulled over for a broken taillight. A mistake anyone could make. What's your taillight? A typo on a tax form? A protest sign in your trunk? A text message to the wrong person? Here's the dirty secret of power. It doesn't need a reason, only an opportunity. The Trentadue case isn't about what they hid. It's about how easily they hid it. No grand conspiracy. Just a few men in a room, deciding a nobody's life was worth less than their pensions. Still not convinced? Let's talk about Terry Nichols, McVeigh's co-conspirator in the Oklahoma bombing. In 2004, Nichols sent Jesse Trentadue a letter from his Colorado Supermax cell. It read, "Your brother was a patsy. They needed a fall guy for the second bomb. I'm sorry." The FBI intercepted the letter. Jesse never saw it. We only know about it because Nichols' lawyer leaked it on his deathbed. Let that sink in. A terrorist had more remorse than the US government. But the Trentadue case isn't an outlier. It's a pattern. 1993, the Branch Davidian siege at Waco. 76 dead. The FBI claimed David Koresh's followers set the fire themselves. Forensic evidence later proved federal agents fired incendiary rounds. 2001, anthrax attacks. The FBI blamed scientist Bruce Ivins, who conveniently overdosed before trial. His colleagues maintain his innocence. 2016, the suicide of Seth Rich, a DNC staffer whose laptop held secrets about Hillary Clinton's emails. The FBI lost the hard drive. Kenneth Trentadue, Bruce Ivins, Seth Rich. Different stories. Same playbook, suicide. Accident. No further questions. So why should you care? Because the next time someone dies in custody, it could be your brother, your neighbor, your child. And when you demand answers, they'll hand you the same script. We investigated ourselves. We found no wrongdoing. But there's a deeper reason. This case exposes the myth of democracy. We're taught that courts protect us, that the press holds power accountable, that truth always surfaces. But Jesse Trentadue had all three: lawsuits, journalists, evidence, and still lost. If the system can crush a Green Beret with a mountain of proof, imagine what it does to the rest of us. This isn't hyperbole, it's math. In 2023, over 1,200 people died in US jails. The majority were suicides or accidents. How many were cover-ups? We'll never know, because the Trentadue case taught the government one lesson: destroy the body. Burn the files. Wait for the world to forget. But forgetting is a luxury we can't afford. Every time we scroll past a headline like "Inmate dies mysteriously in custody," we normalize the unthinkable. We become complicit in the silence. So here's your choice. You can shrug and say that's just how it is. Or you can ask the forbidden question: what if they're lying? Not just about Kenneth, but about everything. The wars, the pandemics, the elections. The Trentadue case isn't a tragedy. It's a vaccine, injecting you with the antidote to blind trust. Still think you're safe? Consider this. In 2022, the DOJ quietly updated its guidelines on post-mortem asset forfeiture. Now, if you die under suspicious circumstances, the government can seize your property without a warrant. Your home, your savings, your heirlooms, all in the name of investigation. Kenneth Trentadue's blood is on their hands. But if you stay silent, the next stain could be on yours. Kenneth Trentadue never held his son. Not once. The boy was 3 months old when they buried his father. Today, that boy is a man, 29 years old. Same eyes, same stubborn heart. And every day, he asks the same question: who killed my dad? For 30 years, this family has done the impossible. They've outlasted FBI directors, outlawyered the Department of Justice, outcried a system designed to silence them. They've turned grief into a weapon, love into a battering ram. You want to know why this story matters? Because the Trentadues are still here, still demanding answers in a world that's desperate to forget, still proving that the truth doesn't need to win to survive. It just needs one person willing to carry it. So share this story. Say Kenneth's name, not because it'll bring him back, but because every time you do, you remind the powerful that their secrets aren't safe, that their lies have expiration dates, that somewhere, right now, a kid who never knew his father is still digging, and he's getting closer. The Trentadues aren't asking for your pity. They're asking for your voice. Because buried secrets don't stay buried forever. They just wait for someone brave enough to dig. Truth buried is still truth. Share this story, because secrets fear the light, and light starts with you.